how could CDMOs better support developers over the next few years, certainly if given the opportunity?
And Emily, thank you for that question. I think we as an industry need to be completely transparent if we want to be true partners in this ecosystem. So I'll give you my direct response to what I think, at least 2 to 3 things that I would tell a CDMO, and I've worked with several of them in the past few years. So first of all, stop selling capacity, right? Start selling capability. Developers don't need square footage and bioreactors. They need partners, right, who understand the complexity in their specific process. That's one. Two, let's please fix the data problem. I've seen time and again my clients talk about CDMOs as operating in a black box. Sponsors can't see batch status, deviation trends, material flow in real time. In this day and age, where you can see a Domino's pizza, being manufactured and delivered, and you know exactly where your pizza is, this should be way simpler. And in fact, I shouldn't say way simpler. This should be way more important for a sponsor to know where their product is. And that's why I say, let's fix that data problem. And the third thing I would say is, as much as a CDMO invests in the latest, shiniest equipment, invest more, if not the same, invest more in the people and digital technology. Right? We haven't uttered the word AI yet, but still a lot of CGT manufacturing is very human dependent. So operator expertise, process knowledge, combined with your digital stuff, as I call it, your digital augmented stuff, which is your AI and your agents and all, see how these work together. The best CDMOs, in my opinion, don't just make a product for a sponsor. They'll make you better at making your product, if that makes sense.
Thank you. That's a very thorough answer. And Emily, thank you for the question. And again, to our audience, please submit questions as you think of them, and we will certainly try to get to them. So Omkar, I think a lot of what you offered to Emily's response can be kind of reassigned to this next question that I have for you. So when you're talking about whether companies evaluate whether to build internally, outsource to CDMOs, or do a hybrid strategy, what financial and operational factors should carry the most weight?
Financial and operational. So 2 lenses. So let's look at financial first, right? The factors that actually matter are the total cost of ownership. It's not the unit cost of a batch, right? Companies usually get seduced by the per dose CDMO rate, but forget to count, tech transfer, quality oversight, batch failures, vendor governance, like all of these add costs, right? That's how outsourcing could look cheap on a spreadsheet, but expensive in reality. And the other financial factor is, by the virtue of this industry, the demand uncertainty. So if your forecast moves significantly, outsourcing can preserve capital flexibility. So if you need dedicated high volume capacity, internal investment starts to make more sense. The second question, I think you said about operational factors, right? The dominant factor, in my opinion, is strategic control. I think we just talked about it a little bit ago. Which capabilities are too core to your product's risk profile to externalize, right? Process knowledge, analytics, we talked about that. Quality strategy. These usually belong in this bucket, even if the physical manufacturing doesn't, right? The process complexity is what you want to factor in as a operational risk factor. The right framing, I know you asked this at the beginning of this question, the right framing isn't build versus buy. It is, what do I need to control? What do I need to access? And which risks are we willing to carry versus transfer over?
Terrific. Okay. Zoe, from your perspective and from a technical leadership perspective, how do you determine which capabilities should remain internal versus which can successfully be externalized to various partners?
Yeah, so you always have to retain the capability, right, that are core to the product knowledge, and also process understandings and the strategic decision making, and also consider external partners when they can provide expertise, capacity. Obviously, we mentioned capacity here, and also having a flexibility in the operations. The willingness of a partner to share knowledge is extremely important, and then also have to consider the cost and the timeline in terms of internal versus external. The utilization percentage of capital and know-how. If there is a insufficient in-house utilization, then the idle resources will burn cash very quickly. In this particular case, you might want to go for external. And then also the success really depends on the strong governance and the clear accountability, regardless of the model.
Okay. Would you say there are certain functions or competencies that you believe every cell and gene therapy company should retain in-house, though, regardless of size?
Absolutely, yes. So this kind of goes back to what Omka and you have mentioned many times. The deep process and product knowledge, of course, has to be retained, and also the CMC strategy as well as the technical leadership, the quality oversight, and also the regulatory understanding and the core expertise needed to make informed decisions about the product development as well as the manufacturing. So those are the core things that you have to typically put in-house. Yeah.
Gotcha. I figured as much. And then finally, Zoe, for my question for you in this talking point, what does each manufacturing model ultimately mean for speed to launch versus speed to scale?
Excellent question. So, there's rarely a, one size fit all kind of answer. Different model really offer different advantages at different stages of the development. The overall goal is to just balance the operational readiness, the quality, the patient access, and also your long-term scalability.
Terrific. Okay. We had a question that came in from Uma that I would pose to both of you. Over-promising capacity is rampant from a CMO perspective. Any tips for developing a set of questions that can assist the sponsor with what is really true?
I'm not sure if I'm following that question. Respond. Any tips for developing a set of questions that can assist the sponsor?
Perhaps the issue being a capacity problem and having a transparent conversation with the CDMO.
So, Uma, tell me if I'm getting this right. But the dirty little secret of CDMO selection is that every facility looks perfect in a slide deck. You bring them on a tour. The clean rooms are really clean, and the coffee is great. Like all of that is really nice. But the real due diligence happens when you stop talking about capability and start asking about failures. And here's what I mean by that, right? Since you asked about a list of questions to like really cut through that noise, ask them, for example, what are the last 3 batch failures were and what they changed as a result. And so a CDMO that can't quickly answer either that question or doesn't track it, doesn't know what to, that's a red flag. Another example I've seen is ask for actual slot utilization rates over the last 12 months, let's say, for example, not projected capacity, actual utilization. So the question about over-promising capacity, so oversold capacity shows up immediately in that number. So you would know, right, what the actual utilization is. You would also want to know who specifically will run the program. This is not the BD person in the room. This is not the conversations and emails you've been having for weeks, but it's the actual program manager, the process scientist, the QA lead, the technology lead who's going to actually be giving you the data. These are some of the questions that I think should be answered. And the right CDMO will welcome every one of these questions. The wrong one will just be uncomfortable. And after that,